Hello. Hello.
Hello, this is Adam Josephson with Mindet.
Hello, Adam. Welcome.
Gentlemen.
Yes.
I think I just sent you an email on that coffee shop. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. I think you seem to have the same determination I have that it could be a right-of-way encroachment.
Yeah, it's hard to say where the line is, but it should be a foot behind the sidewalk.
Well, I appreciate you going out there and painting that up for them.
Yeah, it usually takes about a week and they get it on the list to get out there. So are they trying to do it this fall yet? Or is this for next year?
It seems like it could be a real minimal, level of site improvement. So they could easily be thinking about it for this fall.
Yeah, just a concrete slab and some outdoor seating.
Right. Your bandwidth is coming in real low. Are you planning to do most of the talking tonight?
Dimitri is. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have to close a few other things like video to get better bandwidth or usage.
Okay. Are you guys in the office at all?
Donovan, in case you're wondering why there's two Dimitri Tomaseviches, I invited Chelsea, who's the project manager, and looks like when I forward her my link, she comes up as Dimitri as well. So
We'll try to keep you separate.
yeah.
Welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you.
I'll try without video. It usually works better for sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the Mindet people are out of the office for the most part. I think it'll be into the next calendar year before we get back.
Have you been given a date when you might move back in the office, or is that still undetermined?
It's undetermined, but they said you should probably expect it'll be after the first of the year.
Mm-hmm. So I'll say that members of council did receive your PowerPoint, so they, may have looked at that in advance.
Okay, that was the intention, was to provide it ahead of time.
Yeah, it certainly was helpful. And I know all of them studied it.
We'll give it a quick run through. Donovan, will I be able to share my screen and just use the PowerPoint on my desktop to run through it?
Let me turn to Dan, who's on the call, who would give or grant or not grant that privilege.
It should be, yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, I just wanted to check. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello.
Give me just a minute. Patrick and I were just on a quick phone call. Hold on just a second. All right, we are just past 6:30. I will call our workshop session to order. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard. You're on mute. Councilmember Gerard. Can you hear me?
There you
Little
go.
technical problem on my end. Yes, I'm here.
There we go. Thank you. Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Munson.
Here.
Councilmember Byström. Here. Mayor Bain.
Here. I invite everybody to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to shut off your video before we recite the pledge, you can do so in the bottom left-hand tray of your Zoom meeting. And I believe we'll display the flag here in just a moment. Dan's working to share his screen. Dan, you're on mute. And we are going to, we'll recite the pledge without the flag this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the
of
United
the United
States
States of
of
America,
America and
and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic
which
which
stands
stands one nation under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
liberty
justice.
and
and
justice for all.
justice for all.
We are in workshop session this evening, informal and council and staff I invite, and also our invited guests. I welcome an open discussion this evening. Help us keep the conversation moving in this virtual format. Please, I'll try to keep my eye on the screen here, and if you'd like to speak, raise your hand or jump into the conversation if I'm missing you. If you'd also like to use the chat queue, if you'd like to talk, you're welcome to do that as well. We'll do our best to keep an open discussion here in this virtual format. Our next item on the agenda is open forum. Karen, do we have any open forum submissions for this evening?
I do not have any for this meeting.
All right. And we'll move on to the Highway 97 and Forest Boulevard Interchange Project. Ryan, and I believe we have a couple of members from MnDOT, invited guests from MnDOT here this evening. I'll let you get us kicked off.
Mayor, City Council, we have MnDOT's led by Dmitry Tomatovich, and both usernames from MnDOT are showing up as Dmitry, so he'll have to introduce his team member. They're here tonight to talk about Highway 97, a project that MnDOT's programmed for a potential 2024 reconstruction project from basically the intersection of Hornsby, I-35, where the other project kind of just leaving off, and touching base to the east where our double roundabout project stopped, basically where the concrete meets the bituminous pavement is where they would join in to the project limits. So with that, I'll have Dmitry from MnDOT, as he's presented several times to the City Council in the past, kick off what MnDOT's planning and the goals of their Highway 97 project, and then looking for some feedback from us here on tonight to help guide them in the development of the project. So with that, Dmitry from MnDOT, why don't you take it from here?
Thanks, Ryan, for the introduction. I'm going to make an attempt here to share my screen. So we'll pull the PowerPoint up. All right. And if you could confirm when you can see the PowerPoint, that would be helpful.
Yeah, we can see it.
Excellent, thank you. My name is Dmitry Tomasovich. I'm the East Area Engineer with MnDOT. With me here today is Adam Josephson, East Area Manager. And under also my username is Chelsea Palmatier. She's the project manager for this project. Thank you for the opportunity to come to the workshop today and present this evening. As Ryan mentioned, I've been here a few times in the past. I've had the opportunity to work on the Highway 61-97 project, the left turn lane at 97 and 11th and North Shore Trail, and most recently coordinating with city staff on the Goodview roundabout. So it's a pleasure to be back. Today we'll be presenting the Highway 97 Scandia Trail project. For today's work session, we'll cover road conditions as they are today, project goals and benefits, summary of work, introduce considerations and how we're going to build this road, do a very high level run through the concept layout at a couple of the intersections, and at the end open it up and go over some of the city input and issue topics that will want some input, some today and some as we move forward through the project. So we have about a 15-minute presentation, which I understand some of you may have gotten ahead of time, and then we'll open it up to discussion. So this project covers 1.8 miles of Highway 97, just east of Hornsby to just west of Forest Road in the city of Forest Lake. It connects drivers to Interstate 35 and Highway 61. It's a 2-lane road, which has a mix of residential and business access, left turn lanes, bypass lanes, and no turn lanes at some of the intersections. The road sees approximately 18,000 vehicles per day and has a posted speed limit of 55 miles per hour. There are signals at Everton, Fenway, and the soon to be completed, I believe, reconstructed Hornsby intersection. That's where the 3 signals are. Needs for the project, why is MnDOT pursuing this project? Needs for the project include poor pavement conditions, which was last overlaid, I believe, in 2008. Safety, when we started scoping this project, we pulled some data from 13 to 15. There were about 51 crashes between those years. Stormwater pipes, they're in need of replacement. And there's no bike and ped facilities today, and the intersections need some ADA upgrades. There's also some challenges that we noted that will need further evaluation. Those include the poor soils, the need for stormwater management to meet all the permit requirements, and ultimately how we build this project. So overall goals and benefits are to improve pavement safety, reduce travel delay and congestion, provide bike and pedestrian facilities, improve those ADA accessibility, and upgrade drainage. Essentially all the needs we've identified, the goal is to address all those needs. So let's do a quick run through, a quick summary of work. So the project started out as a mill and overlay maintenance project, but with the pavement conditions and the anticipated poor soils, it shifted to more of that full reconstruct and more of a long-term improvement for this stretch of Highway 97. It will be reconstructed into a 3-lane section, which includes 1 lane in each direction, with an addition of left turn lanes at intersections. It will include signal and lighting updates and ADA upgrades at intersections as well, upgrading that storm water infrastructure, and develop an off-road multi-use trail on the south side of Highway 97. Includes proposed improvements to provide community access to new trail with the refuge medians on Highway 97, and a new connection to Hardwood Creek Regional Trail, and we'll get into that in a little bit more. All of these improvements at our early estimate level are anticipated at about $12 million with plus engineering costs and right-of-way acquisition needs.
Hey, Dimitri, if I can interrupt,
Yep.
are you being to share your screen right now? Because we're not seeing the PowerPoint. If you want to use that.
I'm able to see it.
I'm
Seeing
seeing
it.
I see
Oh,
it.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
seeing it.
Okay, sorry. We'll
Okay.
look somewhere else. Sorry.
That's all right. Let's see. The next slide here is, I believe, how are we going to build this? So a topic of conversation is going to be construction and traffic maintenance. At this stage in the development process, we would anticipate this to be a 2-year project. One of the biggest unknowns is the potential for those poor soils in the area, particularly for the Hornsby to Everton stretch, that section. You may have noticed, or you will notice, some MnDOT crews taking those soil samples in the area. But we will be looking, as we start development, for opportunities to shorten to a 1-year construction, maybe with some prep work. And all of that's considering really maintaining local and business access, utility impacts. As I mentioned, those poor soils that we're gonna do some investigation on, and availability of alternate routes, and really getting that city input as we move forward in that process. And staging and traffic control options early in the consideration are kind of an open table. So they include peak directional closures, and where for a period of time construction could occur on one half of the road, and traffic on the other side while switching direction based on morning and afternoon demand commute. So in this area, the morning demand commute is heading towards 35 as folks travel towards the cities to work. And then the afternoon demand commute would be as drivers head towards 61 back into the city. So that's an option that's on the table, that's at least under discussion that we're looking into. Another option would be temporary widening the road and try to maintain one lane in each direction. Another option on the table will be a full closure with maintaining local access. And really, maybe there might be a good opportunity for a hybrid option, as this road can really be split into 3 distinct sections. Section 1 being that Hornsby to Everton, which is where we anticipate the bulk of those poor soils or the soil needs. Section 2 is really that Everton to Fenway, and Section 3 is that Fenway to 61. And so is there a hybrid opportunity where maybe a lot of work occurs in one section with a full closure, or we're maintaining some full access in the other 2 sections? So those will all be for discussion, and there's more work to be done on this topic, and we will be working closely with city staff as we start to get into the details of construction staging and design. So West project limits, let's run through the project quickly. We start at the county and city limits just east of recently realigned Hornsby Avenue. The Hornsby project did have some reconstruction east of the intersection in the city of Forest Lake limits, and our final design team will evaluate what can be salvaged and what has to be replaced. And then you can see kind of in the layout here, the off-road trail is proposed on the south side of the intersection, which will ultimately connect into the existing trail system in the northwest quadrant of the Hornsby intersection as it heads towards the diverging diamond, heads north, north up Hornsby. Moving east, Everton intersection has existing turn lanes, a signal with 2 LED lights, which I think were installed in 2006. To the north is the Clear Lake residential neighborhood, room for growing childcare, and a vacant lot that has come up for possible redevelopment or development opportunities. To the south is Quick Trip, a small business mall, and a residential development. So the project will include ADA improvements at the intersection, upgrade the signal system, with flashing yellow arrows, pedestrian countdowns. We're looking at signal detection and additional intersection LED lights to improve that pedestrian visibility with the newly constructed trail crossing that would be there. Recently, the empty lot in the northwest quadrant has come up for potential development. I believe a coffee shop was considering the site for its location. It's not any longer, but that prompted some conversation around safety and safe access around that parcel in this quadrant of the intersection. So one of the things the design team will be taking a closer look at is if a median should be added at the intersection, which would better control some of that safe access in that quadrant. There's also conversation about providing direct, in fact, let me go to this picture here. There's also some conversation about providing a direct connection from the trail to Quick Trip. So Quick Trip located here, you can see the new trail crossing on the south side. The idea would be as a benefit to trail users as they utilize the trail to have direct access to Quick Trip. So we've reached out to Quick Trip. They're open to the idea. If it would be constructed, it would be constructed separate by Quick Trip as a separate permit to construct. And it would be a potential connection directly from the trail into their parking facility away from the moving traffic of the pumps. Next intersection is Falcon. It has an existing bypass lane, a right turn lane. There is one power pole lighting. You can kind of see it here in the picture. So from a lighting standpoint, this intersection has just this one. And there's residential neighborhoods to the north. Proposed improvements would include constructing a dedicated left turn lane instead of a bypass lane, which is much safer, and upgrading the intersection lighting to an LED type lighting system, a luminaire. This is one of 3 locations. I'm going to use a laser point again. This area here, this color, and I know it's probably rather small on your screen, but hopefully the PowerPoint you got ahead of time, you had a chance to look. This is one of 3 unsignalized intersections where a refuge island is being proposed to serve the residential community to the north for any pedestrians connecting to the newly constructed trail. So at an unsignalized intersection, the ability to cross and have some refuge versus crossing 2 lanes at one time. And we can talk a little bit about that as we get through the presentation. Between Falcon and Fenway, there are 2 businesses with direct access to Highway 97. They're not shown in the picture here. So we're aware of that in terms of business access. I believe they're Forest Lake Tractor Sales and St. Croix Forge. If I remember right, they make horseshoes. They're a horseshoe manufacturer. Fenway itself has existing turn lanes, a signal with 2 LED lights installed, and also I believe installed in 2006. Here's a picture of, you can see at least one of the lights. To the north, there are wetlands. To the south, proximity, there's the airport, Fenway Park. I believe it's the Summerfield neighborhood, and business access further to the south.
Do you
Similar
also,
to, oh, yeah.
can I ask a quick question? Do you also take into consideration that that is I think an identified primary thoroughfare to Leela, the school? Does that matter when you're considering that intersection?
Yeah, we'll definitely note that, absolutely.
Okay.
At this intersection, the project will include ADA improvements. Let's see. And also similar to the other intersection that had the signalized, upgrade the signal with flashing yellow arrows, pedestrian countdowns, signal detection, and intersection LED lights, again, to improve that pedestrian visibility for that new trail crossing. Next are Floral Bay and Fondant intersections, which have existing bypass lanes. So again, the bypass lanes today are there versus the left turn lanes. There are some right turn lanes and 1 power pole light at Fondant. It's kind of hard to see here, but it's in the bottom left corner here. It's the only intersection lighting for these 2 stretches. So proposed improvements would again include construction of dedicated left turn lanes and proposed upgrade the intersection to those LED lights. This is a quick aerial of the area, and these are the other 2 unsignalized intersections where you have your residential communities to the north, where a pedestrian refuge island is being proposed to serve those residential community connecting to the newly constructed trail. So essentially providing a refuge for anyone looking to cross the 2 lanes of Highway 97. This would provide an opportunity to only cross 1 lane at a time versus 2. And now that we're getting to the east project limits are here at Forest Road intersection, which does have existing roundabout approach lighting from the previous project. A right turn lane, but no left turn lanes. There's some problems with this intersections, which was just outside the scope when we did the Highway 61 and 97 reconstruction in 2016. We would have liked to add a left turn lane to Forest Road. It was outside the project limits, and it's also very limited in room. So we would want to take a closer look at some concepts here and potentially looking at restricting some of the unsafe movements at Forest Road intersections. And I'll just kind of introduce that a little bit, but ultimately MnDOT will still have to develop some concept and introduce those to city staff. So there are a large number of decisions that are all squeezed into a very tight area. There's the roundabouts, or the roundabout. There's the lane drop as you head west coming out of the roundabout. the intersection with potential turning vehicles itself, and the limited sight distance to the from the old railroad bridge, and the potential of bikers and peds going to the trail. So all of these can be somewhat overwhelming. I would say the two most concerning movements would be the Forest Road through movement and the left outs out of Forest Road. And then ultimately, again, we'll take a look at some of the concepts that we could discuss. Interstate Companies is the business to the south, and they evidently already take a right from Forest Road and use the roundabout to head west on Highway 97 instead of making that left. And ultimately, as we take a closer look, we would work with the city for input on that intersection. What's feasible in terms of access restrictions. And this is a quick image from the layout. We know that there is a need for a better connection to the Hardwood Creek Regional Trail. So what you see in the layout here, again, it's kind of hard, depending on your screen size, this little connection here, that would be a connection from the trail, the newly constructed trail, providing a direct connection to the Hardwood Creek Regional Trail. I believe right now, bikers would have to cross, or even pedestrians would have to cross Highway 97 and use the connection north of here on Forest Road at approximately 213th Street behind the City Public Works facility. So that's really kind of the quick run through it. The other comment I was going to make about Forest Road in terms of safety, I believe, and it might have been 2016, but there's at least one accident with a biker. One I believe was fatal, and one was an accident with a biker with a car coming out of Forest Road. So that's the intersection we'll want to have some discussion on as well. So after that quick run through of proposed improvements, to summarize areas where we will be looking for city input. So city utilities, we know that some utilities may be impacted as we start into the detailed design of the project. The proposed signal upgrades at this time are being considered minor revisions, and MnDOT would be willing to construct at no cost to the city. So those signal upgrades that I mentioned, this will be confirmed as we get into that final design that it doesn't change into major signal revisions. So the only cost that I would see to the city with the signals is if you wanted to paint the signal systems with this project, because I believe they're unique color green. And then depending on your maintenance schedule with repainting of those signals. The proposed LED lights at both signalized and unsignalized intersections, MnDOT would be willing to construct, and the city would take on the maintenance component of those lights. So the two signal system lights out there today already have a city existing maintenance agreement, and ultimately we would just amend that or update that agreement as part of the project. We MnDOT we have funding set aside and are proposing to build the trail that's on the south side and the Hardwood Creek Trail connection. But we'd be looking for a local partner, so we're looking for city ownership and maintenance of that trail and the connection to the Hardwood Creek Trail connection. Similar to when we did Highway 61 and 97, and a lot of those trail connections are under an existing agreement. The pedestrian refuge islands will probably generate some conversations. They would also have a city ownership and maintenance component. And we'll talk about, when I say maintenance, it's really to what your local city standards are for maintenance, both for the trail and those refuge islands. And then as we get into more final design details, we'll be working with you on how we build this road, traffic management during construction, and Forest Road, those access modifications that I mentioned. That's an area we want some input. And then sometime after the geometric layout, so I put little snippets of the geometric layout today, but ultimately it'll be finalized and it'll show the proposed improvements for the project. We'll come back to City Council for municipal consent of the proposed project. And when final design details, when we're closer and those are available, and when maintenance and costs are better known, I anticipate either cooperative agreement or maintenance agreement to be executed with the city, as we've done on other projects. So next step will include building a project website and getting a mailing out to the residents in the area with information about the future project. When construction impacts are known, I would anticipate some type of informational open house for both residents and businesses. And as we bring information out, we would look to take advantage of your availability of public outreach tools and continue to update the City Council as the project develops. So I think we've introduced a lot of information here. I think this is a good time to stop for questions and really just open it up to discussion. So.
Thank you, Dimitri. Council, I'll just open it up. Any questions you may have? Councilmember Byström.
Is there an opportunity to kind of reroute Forest Road or move it or kind of change the flow there in any way? I'm just trying to envision kind of what's there. And I'm not sure that that's an option or not, but I do know that is really, really a dangerous intersection. And potentially moving it away from the roundabout in some way, shape, or form, giving a little more distance there. But then of course that impacts the intersecting road on the other side too of 97. So I don't know if there's a reroute opportunity there. Guess that's my question. Or do we, maybe we don't even know that at this point?
Councilmember Byström, just to quickly add to that, the city did go through some concept planning and development with the McCullough property, part of the Washington County EDA Economic Development Grants. But in this case, MnDOT would have to have a willing private landowner want to participate in what that might mirror like. But what Dimitri did state is they are going to look at limiting the current access at Forest Road and preparing concepts for the City Council to review. Now is the time if you're going to do that, because you got one business owner to the south, and we've even heard at a staff level during their current application that they most oftentimes have their staff take a right out anyways and go to the roundabout and go back left if they're going to go west. So we've been working with the one user, and that's something MnDOT would engage through the project development. And you can go south on Forest Road too. But we all know that's a dangerous intersection, but all the other land where you would shift anything, those would become local segments, local share costs, and private property acquisition. But that would be good to reference that study that the EDA did with Washington County, because that does provide a master plan for what that area could have looked like.
Agree. Ryan, is that something that you could send to council?
Yep.
Thank you. Councilmember Husnick.
My concern is the property that's west of interstate, the interstate company there, and then be straight east of the airport there too. There's two properties that one of them is private, and the other one's actually on the airport property there that has really limited access now. And so what is this project going to do to those properties as far as access to those properties? There's some concerns there, because I know right now the private property just has like a driveway goes back to the house there, and then there's very limited access at the airport section there too. And they're fairly good sized pieces of property that someday somebody's going to want to develop. So I just want to know how this project is going to affect that.
Great question.
I was hoping you could clarify the property that we're referring to.
It would be straight west of the interstate company's property, and just east of the runway property at the airport. There's two properties. The airport has a piece of property there right at the end of the runway, and then the next one to the west would be the McCullough property.
if I'm looking at the right location, there's no access modifications proposed at the properties themselves. I think the only access modifications we're discussing would be at Forest Road. Now, the only other two concepts I reference would be the 2 refuge medians being proposed at Floral Bay and Fondant Avenue. And those would still maintain full access for meaning lefts out for those property owners.
Okay.
So with that being the case, and knowing that though, you talked a little bit about some proposed considerations, knowing the redevelopment opportunity adjacent to room for growing, knowing that there is additional redevelopment opportunity on the particular parcels that Councilmember Husnick's talking about, would you do anything to consider access points and what that might look like? I think if one's on your radar, I think the others potentially should be too. And Sam, I don't know, would you be able, are those 2 parcels adjacent to each other where they could have a shared access point? I'm unfamiliar. So are we talking about 1 additional access point, or are we talking about 2?
I think here's there's 2 small houses or 2 properties on the McCullough property, or within the McCullough property and the city property, between Interstate Companies and Fenway. I think that's what Councilmember was trying to discuss. So maybe, Dimitri, just throwing it out there, right? Maybe we look at building an intersection at Fondant, and those 2 driveways on those 2 smaller properties wrap into that actual approach on the south side of Fondant, because you got a sliver of property that's owned by the McCullough property. Therefore, then you would limit the 2 driveway accesses to Highway 97, but then have them come out to a nice approach until that the property would develop as something bigger in the future. Maybe that's something that we suggest looking at and what that would look like. Because then it would also force future development to align up with an intersection conduit. And that was something that we've stated in the past to the McCullough property, based on MnDOT review and feedback. If that developed, where would they be granted access to 97? And it's safer if we have something aligned, and if it was preset already, that might be a nice kickoff to somebody to develop it anyways to the south.
Yeah, I would say ultimately with the project, there's no access restrictions planned to answer the direct questions, but as Ryan had stated, we're open to discussing with staff if there's some proposals beyond that.
Yeah, I think it's worth consideration, because I do think those parcels have had a fair amount of consideration. Are probably pretty high potential. Great question. Other question, Councilmember Byström.
And then to build on Mayor Bain's earlier question about Fenway, there's some significant development happening back that direction. And so is that being taken into consideration? I mean, I know there's some turn lanes and things like that there, but is that being taken into consideration, kind of in planning as well, I guess? I mean, there's the school, there are some new housing developments, there's quite a bit of property back in that area, potential for some pretty significant traffic flow along Fenway area.
Adding to that, the airport business park, future development of anything that might happen in that airport business park, as well as just what's in the 2040 comp plan around long-term plans for Fenway. So I'm not sure how far out you look as far as planning for capacity, but
Right.
those have that intersection in particular probably has the most opportunity for higher volume in the near term.
I think one of the other things I think about, and I know this isn't necessarily in MnDOT's purview, but we do get some complaints, about Everton by Quick Trip there, a lot of traffic flow funneling through there that lands even over closer to Fenway. I mean, the residents live over closer to Fenway, but it's an easier, quick turn off of Everton and then cutting through the neighborhoods there and, kind of, oftentimes speeding. And so just as I think about all of this, is there a way to kind of encourage those folks and in the design in some way, shape or form to continue moving down 97 and actually take Fenway back up, into the area that they're closest to and trying to cut through some of those neighborhoods there. It's a frequent complaint that I receive. So, and again, that's out of MnDOT's purview, but I just am thinking about traffic flow in general through that area.
Other thoughts, questions? I guess I had a question. Dimitri, could you go back to what you had talked about around the planned pedestrian facility at Hornsby? I got a little lost on were you considering pedestrian flow across 97 to the north? Is that what you were talking about? I got a little lost there.
Sure, let me pull it up quick.
And then I could also use the visual. I know there's planned significant development to the north side and just want to make sure that we've got the right, planned pedestrian from the south side of the trail being on the south side to the development to the north. And if that's the intersection where you would plan to transfer over to the north.
I think this is the intersection we're talking about at Hornsby. So Hornsby, I believe, is near completion for realignment, and the signal should be on soon if it's not on yet. As far as trail facilities, I think that's what your question is.
Yeah.
So the proposed trail, let me see if I don't have a laser pointer here, but the proposed trail is being proposed on the south side of Highway 97. It would connect into the Hornsby intersection. There would be a need to cross to the north side to connect essentially to the trail system that's there, that was built with the reconstruction of Hornsby. So
Perfect.
There is an existing trail, I believe, that heads north to the development that occurred there, or is it planned to occur?
Yep.
And there's a trail that I believe heads across the diverging diamond interchange to cross the interchange 35. So the project would connect to Hornsby. There'd be a need to cross and to connect to the existing trail facility. That would be the answer to your question.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Dimitri, I have a question. What is MnDOT's main concern about that Forest Road intersection? I mean, where do you seek most to get city feedback on that scope of work?
Sure, I'll pull that up here.
And I'll just add to Ryan's comment that you can see Interstate there. They're basically property management, snow removal company. They did just receive Planning Commission approval for a site expansion. And so, this is an important intersection of them. And they also did mention that, they often do have the trucks heading northward that do use the roundabout to end up heading west. But there's certainly no restriction, and drivers are at their discretion whether or not they do that.
So as I mentioned, and I went over it fairly fast, but I'll do a very short summary here. There's some problems with the intersection, which was, again, as mentioned, just outside the project, but there's a large number of decision points all squeezed into a very tight area. So as you exit the roundabout today, there's a lane drop that occurs, and there's really not room to provide a dedicated left turn lane into Forest Road. And there appears to be a room to construct a dedicated left if you were to head north on Forest Road. But really the two main primary movements of concern would be the through movement on Forest Road. So anyone trying to cross Highway 97 all the way across Forest Road and vice versa. And then the other challenging moves would be the left outs out of Forest Road. So I'm going to use the south leg of Forest Road as an example. So the challenging move is to make this left here. And that's been echoed already by interstate companies, supposedly already today, actually making a right out of Forest Road, taking the roundabout in a safe maneuver and heading west on 97. So really those lefts out of Forest Road and then that through movement. But also, as I mentioned, there's really not room to provide an adequate left turn lane into Forest. So we don't have a specific concept laid out just yet, but we think that this is an opportunity to restrict some of the unsafe movements that are there. We would probably come up with a couple of concepts, but ultimately we'll be looking for that city staff feedback. So hopefully that helps to kind of visualize some of the challenges, and you can see the proximity issues here. What you can't see is the Hardwood Creek Regional Trail. There is a small hill as you head towards the roundabout. So there's a little bit of limits in sight distance. And then ultimately today, as I mentioned, any bikers or pedestrian would have to cross 97 to head to the north, to the Hardwood Creek Regional Trail connection. And this would provide an opportunity to stay on the trail constructed directly connecting to the Hardwood Creek Trail here, taking away the need to cross Forest to get to that connection. So I think this visual probably does the best job of showing its proximity and its challenges. I would say we'd still reach out to interstate companies again to talk about some of their uses of how they exit, but I think a roundabout is a good opportunity to provide traffic to take right instead of a left out, which is that T-type T-bone crash concerns that we have, and then just use the roundabout to go around. So that's one example.
When you say roundabout, do you mean, is it a full roundabout at Forest, or is it like a modified where it's right turns allowed, only allowed? And then you would use the roundabout at 61.
That would be correct. So one option, one concept we could take a look at is only allowing a right in, right out at Forest Road. So the only thing you could do is come in right and exit right. So really just taking away that move to take a left, and also maybe taking away that through movement as a consideration. But your specific question is at Forest Road from right in, right out, there would be a modified design here that would not allow you to take a left.
Yeah.
And it would force you to go right. That's one of the advantages of roundabouts is that because of its proximity, you're taking away the T-bone conflict and the limited sight distance, and you're safely using the roundabout to go, which my understanding is interstate companies is already doing, but we again reach out to them through this process.
City Council, one thing to think of in your mind on how some restricted intersections have been completed within the city is on Broadway Avenue, just north of, what is it now, Speedway, where old Super America was, that side road right there, how you got some restricted turning movements. That's some of the things that MnDOT will be putting on paper in a concept for review. That's a intersection you could drive and look at to kind of see what they're thinking about and trying to explain.
So if we were to do restricted movement there, I'm having a hard time visualizing if I'm traveling southbound on Forest Boulevard, and if I want to continue on southbound, how do you accomplish that? Or do you have to does that traffic all have to go north up to the next intersection to the north? And you're not able to go south?
I think what was explained, if they went southbound on Forest Road, they would prohibit all the way just driving straight across the road. So depending on where you're going, you would go west or east down 61 or Fenway Avenue to get to your destination.
Yeah. Okay.
And ultimately, we don't have one specific concept laid out of the exact restricted movements. I guess the comment today at this early stage is that we know that there's some challenges here. We know that there's an opportunity for some restricted movement changes. And then we'd really be looking for input, how far we can take it, and input from the city. And then that's where we would put in together those concepts and then really just get input that seems feasible or that's really out of the question. And that's where we would do have some more conversations. So there's not one specific concept that we already have laid out that says this is what we would like to do.
Do you do a more detailed intersection study just to understand for that traffic that's moving southbound, kind of what the, intended direction of travel is, just to understand, percentage of cars that are trying to cross straight over? Is that a study that you would do or information you would gather?
We do keep counts. I don't know that we have them at each specific intersection, so I would have to look into if we have traffic movement counts at this particular intersection. So I'd have to look into that.
Okay. It would be helpful to help inform that decision. To me, the northbound restricting right just makes sense because you've got the roundabout to easily redirect traffic, but it's the southbound and understanding what the impact is for that decision would be helpful.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I might have missed it, but I don't know that I recall hearing, what about a left turn off of southbound Forest Road toward the roundabout? I heard us talking about going right out of there, but going left, toward the roundabout, kids back in that area coming down that way, taking a left to head to school, for example. Did we really talk about the left turn there? I heard right lanes, left lanes. I didn't hear about a turn out of there though, onto Scandia Trail. Or I missed.
Could you clarify the intersection again? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm talking about the Forest Road. So, kind of heading southbound, hitting Scandia Trail and taking a left there onto Scandia Trail. Yep. Toward the roundabout. I don't know that I really heard any discussion about a left-hand turn there. I heard the discussion about a right-hand turn, but not a left-hand turn necessarily.
Yep, and Councilmember Bystrom is exactly right. The user story that you're probably talking about is southbound heading to the high school. What is that suggested route?
Right.
From a safety perspective, we would want them to go north on Forest Road and then come back down and around on 61, but that's where a traffic counts in the morning movements would be good to support one way or another, and when you're deciding what you would restrict.
Right. And if you were to send north up Forest, is that all the way to 11th? Is that where they would go?
Well, it depends on, what the final plan is. If it was a right out, somebody could come, northbound on Forest Road, take it right on Highway 97, go into the roundabouts. If you want to just continue north on 61, or if you wanted to come back around and go north on Forest Road, it's going to be a faster route if you stayed on 61. Otherwise, you got 2 or 3 stop signs on Forest Road you have to stop for before you get up to 11th Avenue.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly hard to get out because you got 3 offset intersections up at 11th.
Right.
But if you're going north on Forest Road and took a right, that's an easy turning movement.
Yeah, I think it's that the neighborhood, I'm thinking about in particular the neighborhood that is on the east side of Clear Lake and what their direction of travel is to get to the high school.
Right.
Yeah.
If you time it yourself in the morning, it would be a good exercise. I think you're going to find it's faster to go north on Forest Road, other than maybe the very south development. Mm-hmm. Go north and then come back east on the county road, then south on 61. Because when I come in the morning in meetings and watch people sitting at the intersection, if they are attempting to take a left, they sit there for a very long time. Mm-hmm. As it's nonstop traffic coming out of the roundabout. Westbound, and then you got sporadic traffic eastbound. So it's like playing Frogger. When do you want to go? How daring are you? That's what MnDOT's looking at for that intersection.
Yeah, and I would worry about that travel to the high school there. I mean, you know, kids trying to take those chances, but and I think there have been some accidents in that regard over the years as well, in my recollection. So just kind of curious about how that might work there.
Agree. Other questions of council this time? I guess I would just want us to be thoughtful in how we sequence the project and what the disruption is for traffic flow. And so there's those that live in the immediate vicinity, but then there's also those that live further to the east in Forest Lake, and this is just their everyday commute. And so they will have been impacted by the bridge construction. They are impacted right now by the construction at Goodview. You know, conceivably, this is viewed as a 6-year project of all of those projects sequenced together. And so I just want us to be thoughtful on what the disruption is and how we manage that.
Noted. I would completely agree. That's one of the reasons we pointed it out as one of the challenges of the project. And I would definitely look to work with city staff as we go from kind of that, we laid out the 4-level concepts of how we can build this road. As we narrow that down, what truly is the best way to build this road, taking all those considerations. So trying to build it the fastest, but also realizing we might have some poor soils. Maybe we can do some prep work. Is there a hybrid option? Your comments noted. Thank you.
Even if it meant a potentially slower project, might be worth it if it's a little bit less disruptive. But it'll be interesting to see what those options look like as you get a little closer.
I just don't want to set the stage where we think it would be easy construction. This is probably one of our most difficult stretches of roadway in Forest Lake that will go under construction because of the vast area of wetlands approximate to the roadway and the limited number of through roads. So it's going to be very challenging, and the soils are the worst that you can find in the city through this section because the city led and did the 2 intersection turn lanes, and the soils were so bad you just hogged down to the water table and filled it up with sand before you could get anything to bridge. I mean, it's the worst in town right through there.
So that said, I would say some over communication on project and website and emails and project status, and we'll have to kind of roll out the whole red carpet as it relates to checking all of those boxes on, you know, advance notice and some website communications, and just under promise, over deliver on timelines. I think managing and setting expectations will be important.
Well, thankfully, there will be a couple of years break, you know, between projects as well. So,
yep.
Few even. We're looking at 24, 25.
And another thing it fits in well with is, you know, the county's project's coming in 23, MnDOT's planning for 24 here, but then the county comes back in 25. So instead of them all being at the same time, we're going to have alternate routes available in the city. And then we'll have to obviously coordinate a lot with school busing, EMS, and just all the other services.
Correct. Dimitri, did you mention what the anticipated timeline is for this project from I mean, noticeable, you know, construction cone time, not just planning time, but the actual noticeable impact to the public?
Sure. We're anticipating a 2-year construction, and we're evaluating right now if there's an opportunity. We'll be starting to evaluate if there's an opportunity to reduce that. So either having a 1 year or a 1 year with some prep work. But as our current message, we're anticipating a 2-year construction need.
Okay, thank you. Other questions council or staff have? Dimitri, I know you had a laundry list of input points from us, and I appreciate that transparency. Do you, any specific items of feedback that you're looking for from us tonight that we haven't gotten to?
I think ultimately today, we really wanted to introduce the project and introduce some of those feedback points. As I mentioned, typically cost is a big question, so I wanted to introduce early what we think the potential impacts could be there. Introduce that there would be some maintenance conversations, for example, with the proposed lighting, and introduce some of the proposed improvements like the median refuge islands. They're not marked pedestrian crossings, but they're median refuge islands that provide that space that for those neighborhoods, they likely would not walk to the signal. They would likely cross 97 directly to the trail. And then again, some of that ownership and maintenance, and really introduce that trail component. Looks like we have funding set aside to build it, to construct it, but we would look for that local partner to own and maintain it. So the goal today was to introduce those topics, get any early feedback, and I think ultimately for City Council and City staff to consider those and provide additional feedback on those as well.
So the trail maintenance, of course, we would always love as much assistance as possible on trail maintenance, but know that that's not always possible. And so I'm not surprised to hear that that is on the project list for the city to share in. Do we have other examples of median maintenance, and do we have, maintenance policies for that? Or is this kind of creating a new item for us? Maybe that's a question more for Ryan.
I would say that's probably a question for Ryan in terms of if you have any existing examples.
Yeah,
Everywhere you guys have a pedestrian facility crossing a trunk highway or a county, the city maintains that stuff.
Okay. And so essentially we're adding to the inventory, but it's not a new concept.
Staff has had the conversation already with the 2 island refuges being proposed on the other roads. We did have some concerns, but we wanted to see further concepts because we're basically inviting pedestrians to cross at a facility where it leads to nowhere. So if you went north on Floral Bay or Fondant, there's no pedestrian facilities. Do we really want pedestrians crossing in those locations? So that was a concern of ours. Plus you got these little skinny concrete medians and a trunk highway, much probably skinnier than what we have on the roundabout projects. So our concern too was a pedestrian actually standing there. Are they really safe, even though we're crossing one lane of traffic? But then the winter maintenance too, it's a difficult spot to get equipment into on a trunk highway. So those are some of the things that we discussed at those 2 particular locations, but until we really see, something laid out and where we're sending them, we want to vent that, further. The other stuff is traditionally intersections of pedestrian crossings that we're very familiar with in the city. At Fenway and Forest Road and Hornsby are going to have all controlled intersections. So those are as safe as you can be, and then crossing Forest Road, it would just be a west-east crossing. So it's just those other 2 that I mentioned earlier that, we're thinking about what could be there, but those are our concerns right now.
In absence of doing that pedestrian refuge median, wouldn't we though be just sending pedestrians along the north side of 97 without any pedestrian facility to get to one of those crossings? So is it kind of the lesser of 2 evils? Is that the scenario?
It's a give and take, and it kind of goes into the whole other thing of what's the level of your pedestrian or your bicyclist, right? The more advanced person is going to cross anywhere pretty easily and safely just because of their experience and knowledge. Regardless, even if you had the refuge, would you allow a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old to cross there? So do you want to promote that? That's the things that we're going to have to weigh. Is no facilities better than none because the advanced user is going to have no problem maneuvering anyway, or otherwise if we construct these, we now are inviting younger youth, and that's things you got to deal with. I mean, it's a risk both ways.
True. Well, there's something to keep us up at night.
why it's hard to urge people to go in this career some days nowadays.
Yeah, those are good things for us to think about, and it'll be helpful. I'm incredibly visual. It'd be helpful to see that in future designs and just kind of weigh out what that looks like. It also will be good to get some public input on those questions from those neighborhoods.
Or potentially see some safety studies on them. You know, where are they currently located? What does the data look like? I'd also like to, as I think about this, I know city utilities is on this list, and what does that mean? What are we defining, and how does that impact the scope of the project? Is there an opportunity to do some things potentially with everything torn up, you know, that we might not have had an opportunity to do otherwise? Will that impact that timeline? What does that look like? So
City utilities directly refers to sanitary sewer and water main, water supply. Potentially, we are going to have to relocate some existing water main because of the widening of 97. There's other areas where we have very bad performance of force main in the area. We will probably look at replacing. And then also the whole utility situation at Quick Trip, where we don't have sewer and water on the north side of the road. We'll look at crossing that stuff while the road's ripped up too. So Public Works and myself have been working on those estimates. Those estimates are in our sewer and water. You know, obviously they're not financed, but they're in our proposed budget in 24 to start accounting for those. So those discussions will start maybe even tonight, but so it's earmarked. So we already looked at those, where we're deficient on utility service and what it would take to get the stuff across the road to allow for development or even residential connections to the water.
yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is there still a lot of them along in there, aren't they? There's
Everything north of 97 there as well.
Right. Yep. I need to move myself out of the sun.
And just a quick comment on, we will be, like I said, providing those concepts to city staff for those refuge islands. And we did want to reach out to the council before we started to reaching out to the public. So as you mentioned, desire to get public input. So that would be one of the next steps.
That's great. All right. Any other questions for Dimitri and his team tonight? Dimitri, thank you for being here this evening. We look forward to another successful project. Please engage. We look forward to frequent communication. And if you need anything else from us, please let us know.
Yeah, then come take care of me on Heroin 97 pretty soon too, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today. We're slowly making progress along this entire stretch of Highway 97. So thank you very much for the opportunity today.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item this evening is the 2021 budget, and first review through the budget. Council, I know a packet was emailed to you late this afternoon. This is intended to be a first look, our first opportunity to. There we go. And we certainly will have multiple workshop sessions as we work towards moving towards a preliminary levy in September. With that, Patrick and Sandy, are you ready to go?
Yes, I can start as long as everybody can hear me.
We hear you just
For some
fine.
reason I got Patrick Casey's name by me. I'm not sure why, but it's working. I had a little difficulties earlier, so I'll start and Patrick's going to have a few things to say at the end.
Perfect.
And what we're doing today is we're going through the review of the preliminary 2021 levy and the associated budgets that are associated with having an impact on this levy. So first of all, I'm going to go through a quick review of the calendar remaining at this point. Today, we are, like I said, going through the budget and the preliminary levy that we're going to present to you today. There is an opportunity again to go have another workshop on Monday, August 24th, as well as if needed on August 31st. On September 14th, we are on slated to get the approval from council to certify the proposed preliminary levy, because we do have to have it proposed legally by September 30th. We have another regular meeting for the final budget workshop discussion on October 12th, as well as the truth and taxation public hearing and the adoption of the final 2021 tax levy and final budget on December 14th. And remember, this is the preliminary levy. You do have the option to make some changes come for the final tax levy, but it can't be any more than what we have today. So we went through a lot of discussions on the administrative level, and hopefully, and we did provide a packet as well as some detail for the council to review. And again, these are just the budgets that have an impact on the levy in some form or fashion. We will be bringing the final overall budgets to the council at a later date. And just to start off, we're just going through what is a budget. A budget is a financial and policy document for how we provide services to our residents. And it includes operating and capital cost. And it is used by rating agencies, such as for our bond rating, to determine the financial and operational stability of our organization. So it is an important document that we have to review and make sure that it's adequate. And some of the parameters that we used for our general fund budget for 2021 budgets was, fortunately, all union contracts have been negotiated and are in full force. So we were able to use contracts that are done, and we use the salary increases and all the other increases that are factored in. Non-union contracts assumptions, we're using the assumption that it's the same increase as the union contracts. We did factor in conservatively, assuming a 10% increase. They're still in the process of medical increase where we're really going to be at, but we don't expect it to be any higher than 10%, but we are being conservative at this time and keeping that in. Liability insurance increase, we're pretty sure is going to be at that 6% level. That's pretty much where it's going to end up, and we're going to be starting that in September. Workers' comp insurance, the original increase was a 9%, but we had a lot of that offset with what we call a mod rate decrease. We're doing a good job, which means we're doing a good job in keeping their workers' compensation at a good level where it's not going to increase. It actually decreased our increase. We also reallocated contracted services to fund a parks and maintenance position. Basically, this was a wash, and our parks maintenance, Dave Adams thought it was a good fit to be able to get, first of all, good services, and also possibly reduce some other places in the budget that we might be able to do in the future. And last year, as you remember, we had a part year for the communications park position. Now this year is coming in at that full year. Even though we didn't actually fill it last year, we're keeping that full year position in for 2021. We did with the look at the economics at this point and what we anticipate, as well as talking to the building department. We do anticipate an economic downturn in building permits. And so, you know, a lot of the commercial building isn't as much as what it has in the past, whether it's for COVID or, you know, what other factors may be involved in that economic downturn. We are decreasing it by 115,000. So that was a hit to our general fund budget, but we did our best to try to keep that hit at bay. Looking at the expenditure budget, and again, these are only the budgets that are affecting the levy. And the general fund total expenditure budget, 10,182,226. Capital improvement budgets, which is our street budgets, 2,957,250. EDA usually stands in that 50,000 range at 50,730. Debt service, I got broken down between the three. The debt service for the city center, 1,363,726. Debt service for the YMCA, 593,080, and debt service for the road rehab at 312,375. And these are the debt service payments that are actually due in 2021. The capital equipment fund, 1,048,001. And how this affects the operational tax levy is put before you. The general fund, like I said, we had 115,000 of building permits that contributed to this that we're not going to be anticipating receiving that revenue source. So we are proposing for the fiscal year 2021 of bringing that levy to 8,203,719, which is a change from the prior year of 482,758. This brings just the general fund increase of a 6.25%. Capital equipment, I did provide a copy of the capital equipment details. We are going to be in need of increasing this occasionally, and we are having some conversations regarding how we can possibly help this account in the future in the next few years. But we are adding 50,000, bringing that levy up to 800,000, which is a 6.67% increase in that fund. Capital improvement, again, always a need in the capital improvement for the street fund. We've made a conscious effort to try to increase that levy each year to be able to sustain the street projects, not only in the near future, but in the future to come. Bringing it up $50,000 up to $100,000 levy. The debt service, again, this is a little bit different, going to be a little bit different than the actual expenditures because we are required to actually levy ahead of time, and we're using the fund balance to correct some of the issues of the past where there's fund balances available in the debt service accounts that we're using to get us back in track of where we're supposed to be. But we're actually levying for the August of 2021 as well as the February of 2022. You always kind of have to be ahead of the game in how you levy. So this will get us back in track of where we're supposed to be for the levy for the debt service. The EDA, we're keeping it straight at the 50,000. Therefore, the total levy coming to 11,484,799, which is a total increase of 632,838, which brings it to the 5.83. And as we go through, you'll see how similar it is to actually last year. Looking at that levy percent increase, we're almost mirrors what we had last year. Looking at what we've had in the past a few years, with the exception of 2019, I think we're been in line with what our needs are in the past compared to what they are today. So don't anticipate any too much changes, even though we took a big hit in that permit revenue. And here's a kind of a breakdown of where the tax levy is going. And this again almost mirrors 100% to what we had in the prior year. The majority of it is going to go to that general fund, and that's 71.43%. And again, that's the biggest part of our budgets. That's our operational cost, including labor costs, materials, and supplies. So it's expected that the majority of it will go to the general fund. Capital equipment is the next, where it goes 7.4%. This is that long-term funding again to address the major pieces of equipment, and some of the equipment that we have slated for 2021 is fire trucks, which is a big cost, police vehicles and squad cars, as well as public works loader and equipment, and a few other things, but these were the majority of the cost was in these items. The capital improvement, which was the paving account, is at a 0.44%. And that's where we, again, fund our street paving and repairs. And currently it's funded with the state shared revenue as well as franchise fees. And as we know, we, got that bond issuance last year, which will help fund that in the next few years as well. Debt service is the next to the general fund as far as what funds the levy, and that's at 20.3%. And that funds, again, the city's repayment of the general obligation bonds. But that does not include the water fund or the sewer fund. The water and the sewer fund actually funds itself to pay for the bond debt. Economic development is at a 0.44%, and that is used for the initiatives for that fund. And here's a history of the tax rate. And of course, you know, being that we're in August, we're not finalized as far as what that 2021 rate is going to be. But if we use an assumption and use the same values that they had in 2020, which was a 5.3% taxable market value increase, as well as a 1% fiscal disparity decrease, and that's the way they calculate the tax rate. If we use the same assumptions as what the Washington County used last year, we're like, again, mirroring almost the same as what we had last year, from a 40.33 in 2020 to a 40.59 in 2021. So as long as, you know, and we will know more by either the end of August or early September as far as what that taxable market value will be, and hopefully have some answers to that. But I don't anticipate that it's going to be much different. And even if the taxable market value went down a little bit, that fiscal disparity decrease might go up. So there's a lot of wiggle room there as well. So wait and see, but at this point, this is an estimate that we came up with based on the best assumptions that we could determine at this time. And if that all holds true with that estimate, our estimated cost to the homeowner, for example, a $300,000 property tax bill would be $1,177, and this again mirrors almost to exactly what we had last year. A little bit difference, but not much. Equivalent to $98.08 per month, $22.63 per week, and $3.23 per day. So with that in mind, our next steps are going to be to continue to discuss this levy if needed, certify the levy in September, finalize the 2020 budgets, including the non-levy funds such as the enterprise funds, discussion of the 10-year plan and strategic plan priorities, and continue discussion of the final 2021 budgets. And by December, have that final levy and budget certified. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Patrick, who's going to talk about the strategic plan objectives.
Well, thanks. Sandy, if you, as I go along, flip the slide since I don't have control.
I can do that.
I'd appreciate that. I just wanted to go over how this budget relates to some of the strategic plan objectives that we outlined when we created and passed the strategic plan. And the first objective is to have the city of Forest Lake operate in a financially prudent, responsible manner while maintaining basic infrastructure and facilities for the community, and develop a sound financial plan and infrastructure plan, which is a major component of that impacts the quality of our life and economic development. So the proposed 2021 budget plan does that. It provides for a continuation of all services. It also is a very conservative approach to the budget, and our discussions when we were putting the budget together was that we really don't know what next year is going to bring. We're a little concerned. We don't know what the state revenues are going to do. Fortunately, the general fund doesn't depend a lot on state revenues, so we're not too worried about that. But when it comes to some of our road work, that's where we get more funding from the state, and we just haven't announced, they haven't announced what they're going to do. As you know, the state has announced, I believe it's a $4.5 billion deficit on the state level. So one should anticipate reductions in some state support. We are adding, Sandy talked about this earlier, a position to the general fund. We're just eliminating lawn service, care, athletic field maintenance, and snow plowing that we contract out and shifting it in-house and adding an employee to support that. The 21 budget also provides additional funding for continuing development of the 10-year plan. Under the strategic plan, that's got a target date of November 2020. We have met with Ehlers twice now, and we'll be actually meeting again with them this week to continue that. We've identified most of the city assets that we can find and what those future needs are and how we're going to maybe include those in the 10-year plan. However, the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission has also begun doing that. They're not going to be identified in time for the 10-year plan, but under the next objective is they are to try to work towards getting themselves to a place where they can identify their needs and needs assessment. Strategic Plan 2, it's provide a clear vision for the City of Forest Lakes parks, trails, recreation system, and facilities. Like I just said, the Parks, Lakes, and Trails at their last meeting began identifying their priorities and needs. COVID-19 has changed dramatically what we envision as parks and recreation services. We really have to take kind of a pause because of social distancing and the inability to offer basically group activities. This will be a challenge for Parks and Trails to look into and then recover from whenever the COVID-19 has already passed us by, whether that's this year or like most of the publications and information, probably next year. So we'll probably be in this for a while. That's a significant change to what we do now. We hopefully looking at provided alternative delivery services to the programs. And again, wait and see what happens in the next year, because I think this is, like I said, we'll be here for a while. The proposed 2021 budget has no funding right now for needs assessment. That was identified as that was one way to help parks, trails, and recreation, or lakes, I should say, find out what the community's thinking. And although we had a presentation last Monday from the Lakes Association, we have added no additional funding for any lake associations or any possible programs that they may want to expand. However, on a good note, the Castlewood Golf Course is doing well. We're very happy with what they've done. It's firm footing. However, the contract with the Castlewood Golf Course operator calls for a $50,000 guarantee to them if they don't reach that profit level. So we have included that with the 2021 budget. We will be continuing to review that as the final numbers start to come in from the golf course and see if that's going to be 50,000, 30,000, or zero. I don't expect it to be zero, but we will see how they go. I think they've been having a good year, although this year may not be the right year to compare because golfing across the nation has been up, up, and up. People are out there golfing like crazy. So we may be in hopefully we don't want to get too far ahead on ourselves, because when that levels off, it may be a different story. We are also looking at expanding services in the golf course. We'll cover that actually next Monday when we talk about the CARES Act funding and the requirement for us to social distance and protect our employees and residents from the COVID-19, and part of that will also include the golf course and that clubhouse. So we're anticipating possibly using some of the CARES Act money for an expansion of the clubhouse to help us social distance there. Next one, Strategic Plan 3, again, is to proactively engage in diverse community outreach, social media, and communication. Again, this has been an amazing challenge this year to try to outreach in person to anyone at all. However, we did budget last year for a full-time position to begin at the halfway point of 2020. Our job description is complete. We're ready to advertise for the position. We do have to wait for the union approval of the memorandum of understanding. We need that to establish the pay and grade and step and place that into the contract. So hopefully that will come very shortly. What we'll probably do there is start the advertisement before we get that memorandum completed. We don't anticipate any issues on the union. They've been always very good about adding new positions to their contract. So we don't see that as a problem. Also, this strategic plan objective identifies a new communication plan, which is targeted for January 2021. That's why we need to get this person on board as quickly as we can, so we can change that plan and adapt to the communications and new reality of life that we have, which is social distancing, remote meetings, and working from home. So I think this is even more important than it was last year at this time, being that the situation we have. And finally, and just as you all know, you gave us approval to purchase and upgrade our electronic communications equipment so we can better facilitate our virtual meetings and communications, not only between council and staff, but also between the public. So those are all been ordered. So we hope that will be in place and ready to go shortly. We're already adapting to the new realities. Number 4 was the improve the environment for new and existing business development by leveraging the city's high quality of life, local advantages, and natural resources and strong schools. This has basically been the mainstay of the Economic Development Committee. Again, with COVID-19, they've had to shift directions a little bit, but we have started the Downtown Committee that has had at least one meeting, and we'll continue to discuss what the future holds for the downtown. The EDA is also looking at the business recruitment and retention program. Hopefully we can recruit more businesses to the downtown area or to Forest Lake as a whole and retain the ones that are here. This is particularly important now, and as the stress on retailers for the lack of actually indoor shoppers makes a difference on their bottom line. We have been paying attention to what Washington County is doing as far as subsidies or grants to businesses who are struggling. And the next few weeks we'll be working and looking at whether we should do something similar to match that or to aid some of the businesses as well through the CARES Act funding. That would be the COVID-19 assistance. Just for downtown, they've also, EDA, we have completed a sanitary sewer study. We are in the midst of completing a stormwater study. Those will tell us if our infrastructure is good enough or robust enough to handle future development. And if it's not, what we need to do to make it robust to handle development. One of the items of concern in both kind of talked about this a little bit when we talked about the code enforcement last week is we have a couple of positions in the city that should be more directed towards economic development, or we should have a position which people wear a lot of hats. The assistant city administrator wears a hat for economic development and other duties, and so does the planner that we have. We're pulled in many directions, and it takes a little bit away of some of the concentration on economic development. So that's a balancing act that we, in the future, we'll have to address. We haven't addressed that this year again because of the conservative nature of this budget based on the pandemic. But I think just to clue you in or to give you a heads up, we're going to have to make a decision on that within the next year or two to straighten that out and have some more concentration on economic development and free up some of the planning and development work that's internal. So I think that's all I have on the strategic plan. I will send it back to Sandy, or if you all have questions for Sandy or I, we'll be happy to discuss that or go from here.
Before we, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. Before we jump into questions, can we do a spin through the capital improvement budget and what's planned? Can we just pull that up on screen and kind of talk through anything that was significant and significant additions other changes from last year? I guess both capital equipment and capital improvement.
Yeah, I would go back to the capital equipment because that's really the major change. If Sandy, if you can put that back on the screen.
Actually, the capital equipment, you want the detail of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to pull that up because that wasn't on the actual presentation. It was in the packet, but
That's in your memo. If you want to turn to your, I think it's page 3 of the email memo that you got today. And Sandy, you can correct me if I'm incorrect. There hasn't been a big change as far as the 2021 capital improvement. Those have been minor adjustments that show what we're going to spend, what equipment we need to spend. The real concern about the capital equipment budget is not so much year 2021, but years 2022, 23, 24, and 25. What we have occurring there is we have 2 fire trucks that need replacement and are scheduled for 2022 and 2023, and then 2023 and 2024. They're split because of the way you order those. You can order them and split between fiscal years pretty easily. So that's why they're laid out that way. And down below, same thing with the plow trucks, where we've budgeted for a plow truck both all in 2022, 23, 24, and 25. Those are major impacts on what we have to do. Those are major, huge pieces of equipment. Also coming down the road in future years, we have a ladder truck that's going to need to be replaced. That's a $1.8 million ladder truck sooner or later that we'll have to face. So we are challenged at how we're going to meet those obligations. As you can see by the memo, by the time we get to 2023, we start running a significant fund balance deficits in the order of 652,000, 827,000, and 812,000. Part of that we will address in the financial plan and try to figure out the best way to reconcile those. I'll also let you know the fire chief and the finance staff have begun to look at long-term leasing for those large pieces of equipment. Those are 20-year pieces of equipment. And try to paying for those. It's like buying yourself a Cadillac Escalade or whatever at $70,000 or $80,000. Not most of us probably can't write that check today. So we look at financing it, and we will have to look at the same way. If we can find a financing vehicle that makes sense, or I should say financing method that makes sense for these vehicles, we will do so. In speaking with the manufacturer of the fire equipment, they will write a lease anytime, anywhere they can, and try to make that work for us. So different scenarios, different interest rates. Again, we're fortunate in some of these things because the interest rates right now in this kind of leasing are in the 2%. That's fairly decent money wise. It's almost as good as we can get for bonding, but I will reserve what we're going to do until we talk long-term financial plan. But that's an option for those out years in 22 through 25. The goal here on a capital equipment fund is that bottom line, that fund balance at the end of the year should always be at least somewhat, should be in the positive, period. I mean, and we had that last year. We adjusted a little bit more. The fire trucks are here, the plow trucks are here. And again, these aren't things that are just on the wish list because we want a fancy new truck. It's because these have been in service for quite a long time. And as you can tell by the dates, it's a 1997 and 2006. So I think, no, did I misread that? 2008. So they've been in service for a while, or they have a lot of hours on them. So they need replacement. They're just worn out. So we just have to figure out the best way to do that without sacrificing service, but with also breaking the budget. So that's our challenge for the capital equipment and long-term financial plan. So.
Thank you. That's helpful. Just taking a quick look here. On the 2021 of what's proposed in the 2021 column, those are all carryovers from what was in last year's budget. Is there anything new for 2021?
Sandy, you can add, I don't know how much you changed 2021. if at all?
Well, everybody might have changed it where, I guess everybody would have to answer to that because this is kind of a community document that we all go into to make the changes. And so if there was something changed or switched over from 2021, it would be into that 2021 calendar or line. So all in all, we have a capital outlay of $1,048,000. It's just a matter of this is listed of what we have, absolutely. There was some that was pushed forward and some that were actually pushed forward into 2021. I know plow chucks were pushed into 2022. So there was a lot of give and take between years. It's just everybody had their share in helping to make this happen.
Understood. I will, I'll take a look. I'm just interested in kind of what some of the highlight changes are, and I can take a look at what was in that same line next year and bring back questions for a future conversation if I have any. So maybe a point of clarification. So we've got the capital equipment budget. We also have this capital improvement budget, and refresh my memory. Is it the capital improvement budget, the budget that we just started that has not historically been funded?
Yes.
And was it last year was the first year that we put anything into it? Is that right?
Yeah, that is basically your paving budget that has not been funded, that has relied on state share revenues and a franchise tax, franchise fee, I should say. That's all that's ever been done. We have never, before last year, contributed anything to that fund. This year, we're asking for $100,000. Last year was 50. We should be at $1 million a year, basically, for funding that to make sure that our roads are at the average of 5% or greater. But we have to start somewhere. Again, we'll be looking at what the best methods are to address that, whether it's future bonding, whether there's alternative revenue sources, which there are some options, which may or may not be popular, or if we just continue on the course to try to limp along. So again, that's another thing. That's why that 10-year plan is very important to kind of take those major things along with the general fund operating and water and sewer to try to at least get staff and council to understand what the challenge is, and hopefully we'll be able to get there by November.
So in the category of alternative sources of revenue, I know we've looked for bonding, this last year, and we've gone after some additional sources. When was the last time we took a look at franchise fee to see if there was any capacity for increased franchise fee? I don't know if that's, I don't know when the last time we talked about that was, and I don't know if that's because we're maxed out and there's nothing further we can do there, or if there is some opportunity to raise some additional revenue in that manner.
Yeah, Sandy, you may have the answer. I don't remember, but I think it was 2013. We might have looked at it or later. And it has a term, and I think it's 2033 that it expires.
2034, yeah.
2034 that is up for renewal. That doesn't mean we can't go back and ask the utilities to adjust for it. But right now we are at where we're at until 2034. I think that's a discussion point that we have to have internally to decide if where we stand, do we stand high or low, where we compare to other communities, and if that's an option. The other is a local sales tax, which has to be identified for certain projects, which this would qualify for. Paving would qualify for a local sales tax. Park development and purchasing of parkland would be another. That's a little rougher road to go through. You have to get the state of Minnesota's approval through the legislature, and you have to have a referendum approval. It does make some sense to look at that because if you really think about a state or local sales tax, we have for this area, you have a major retail space out by the highway. And you have a lot of people coming from outside of Forest Lake to shop there. So the theory would be you could get a lot of out-of-town residents to pay a sales tax to pay for your paving and parks and things like that. But we've got a lot of work to do before we get down to that, and we haven't even begun to take a look at that until, hopefully we'll again talk about that Wednesday with Ellers and continue that discussion.
Yeah, I think I'm less inclined to have a near-term interest in a local sales tax. But I guess, there's that part of what that 10-year plan is going to prompt is how do we fund this? And I'm sure we're going to have many conversations of different options. But as I look at what we have on the table for 2021, knowing that we have probably some unfilled needs in parks, and we haven't done anything around increase for the lake. If there is, and capital equipment is chronically underfunded, if there is some way that we could, in the near term, adjust franchise fees, if there's capacity to make an adjustment there, it's additional revenue dollars, and we could spend it 5 times over, I am sure. So maybe worth looking at. I don't know if that's something that could be a 2021 project, and you may also find there's just not capacity to do it. So. I took us down a couple of very specific paths. I guess I'll open it back up to council on any questions or areas of conversation you'd like to have at this point. Councilmember Gerard.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for your presentation. The slideshow tonight was a lot easier than the 15 pages that you sent, but I'm going to refer to the 15 pages that you sent. On page 12, there's one column, there's one item that I'm in particular. It's called insurance, and it's 53,600, and it's 367,000. And this year it's going to be 1,500. And I didn't see anywhere else in the forms, and I only had a couple hours, but I didn't see anywhere that it was getting deducted out somewhere.
Yeah, what we did a few things a little bit differently with insurance in particular and with legal services. We're putting it all in one account now rather than distributed it amongst all the different departments, because that's something that we can manage better in one account. All the other different departments really don't manage it. Finance does. So we ended up taking everybody else's budget out of their department budgets and put it into one account. So you're gonna see some variances there, as well as a little bit in legal as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just a clarification, you asked about the 2021 CIP versus last year. This year's CIP is $7,800 less than what was proposed in 2021 or last year. So it's pretty even as far as, I mean, there's been some back and forth on what the vehicles are, but the amount is pretty much the same.
There you go. That's helpful. Thank you. Council members, other questions? Also, this is a good opportunity for us to, ask some questions that or things you might want to consider as part of future budget workshops related specifically to the general fund. Again, we're going to prioritize general fund in these first couple of sessions first, knowing we can get into some of the enterprise funds later. They do not have the September initial levy certification requirement. Councilmember Munson.
So I just have one quick question, and I think you stated this earlier, Sandy, but there is, and actually you just reiterated it, Mara, so I think I just answered my own question, but opportunity for additional workshop. I haven't had a chance to dive into this, the 15 pages probably in depth yet, and I know you guys have been working really hard to get it out to us. So there are, did I see 2 more opportunities? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
There's going to actually next week, I think we have an opportunity as well. We're going to talk about this at a workshop before the actual council meeting.
Got it.
An opportunity if needed.
Thank you. And I would concur with Councilmember Gerard. Your presentation was a perfect overview for those of us who didn't get through the 15 pages of budget.
I would recommend that we just set tonight aside and commit to that 6 p.m. workshop session before next Monday's council meeting that starts at 7, a 1-hour budget workshop. And I would suggest that we all kind of take this time and digest what's in the materials, get through those line item details that are provided in advance, send questions to staff, and we can just walk through questions and have an open discussion. And then also out of that, decide what else is needed before we get into a decision for that first meeting in September.
Yes, and if you have questions that come up during the week, it would be great if you can get them to us, and then we'll have an answer for you on Monday night. That would be the least efficient, most efficient, and help us know what you're looking for.
Certainly something I need for this, to make any kind of decisions. It's going to be a few questions, I'm sure, but I concur that it's going to take me a week to digest some of this stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Appreciate all the input, though. Thanks.
Yeah. I do think I'd be interested in particular. So I know the EDA had an initial budget workshop, and they were very comfortable with the recommendation that's coming through in council. And actually there was some feedback on EDA that if there is a year to minimize general fund and levy impact of the EDA, that they were, there was some feedback of some desire to do so and to minimize any budget increases related to EDA. So I know there's been feedback there. I would welcome the opportunity to hear feedback specifically for Parks, Lakes, and Trails. I know that they had a vision workshop and to kind of look at some longer term planning items, but specific items specific to 2021, it'd be helpful to hear any of their priorities, and I'd like to incorporate that feedback into future workshops if possible.
And I would echo that sentiment. And then another question about Parks, Trails, and Lakes is, clearly they didn't probably have the level of expenditures this year that they may have had. Is there anything that they're looking to do that, we could include in this year's budget, or could we shift the fund balance, for some of that? So just looking overall at that Parks, Trails, and Lakes budget, and is there some room to move those numbers around or shift some work, maybe back into this fiscal year?
I'm on mute. I think between COVID and also the first half of the year activities related to the golf course just has resulted in an unusual year for them. And so I agree with your comments, Councilmember Byström. Other broader questions that you have at this time, or things that you would like to give staff direction on, Councilmember Gerard?
Is it possible to get that nice PowerPoint presentation sent out to us? So as we refer back, the big picture is kind of nice to have when I go look at the little picture.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We can send you.
Agree. Patrick, did you mention, I know there's a number of ongoing discussions with Ellers around 10-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
Did you mention timing of what you think first draft looks like for that? And I know we're a ways away, but do you have a?
Yeah, I don't know the first draft. We've have a first draft internally. We've had that we had to proof and look, and we had to add things to it and kind of digest that. The target is November. I would expect that we might bring that to you in October. Hopefully, I'll have a better answer for you next Monday after we meet with them on Wednesday.
Okay.
And some of the things we added, is future public works buildings, future staff needs and things like that wasn't there before that we had to include, and then of course streets and roads and all that other things.
Very good. I have a specific question. I know one of the strategic items that were listed, or one of the staff items that was listed, was bringing back into house a park maintenance position that had previously been contracted out. David, if you're with us and not in the car, can you just talk through your consideration of that move and that position? Council, that had been a hot topic of conversation on getting those services contracted. What's been your assessment of that, and why do you think we should reverse course?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Hear you great.
So first step was last year, or reverse back about 3 years. It was decided to contract out all mowing citywide. Beginning this year was the first year we eliminated the contract mowing of city parks. So full-time, that was basically trading a full-time employee, and then it washed out with what we paid in contract for parks mowing. So we did that this year. Myself haven't heard many complaints. I think it's went really well. So the next phase of that was to bring more in-house. We would cancel the contract mowing of the Fenway Athletic Complex, as well as cancel the contract of the mowing and snow plowing of the city center. So currently all the lawn care maintenance and the winter snow plowing at the city center is contracted out through building maintenance. So that money funded in building maintenance would be shifted to park maintenance, and contracted services for Fenway would be shifted to a full-time wage. Currently, we're paying about $90,000 a year just in those two contract services, which pretty much adding up wages and benefits for a full-time employee is a wash, or probably a little bit less. As you know, you mow Fenway once a week, and snow plowing, it's when it snows. So not only are you basically washing out your fund balance, but you're freeing up a full-time employee to do other field maintenance in parks. They would be funded out of the park, so that would add a lot more hours of additional maintenance that could be done. And also for Fenway, we can work with FLA that if the lawn is getting, the grass is getting high in the outfield and there's a tournament coming up, instead of paying a call back to a contractor for the full amount for the week, we can send city staff out there on a Friday afternoon to quick hit even the complex, just the 4 softball fields. We're able to respond to a lot of that stuff quicker, instead of hemming and hawing over, okay, well that's going to cost a weekly charge, a callback. So, and then the city center too, just being responsive for snowing. Usually your contractor may either be in the city or not in the city, but we're already out plowing, so we can make swings through the city center to throw salt, during the daytime, and then we can coordinate with police and fire to clear the lot and move cars and make sure the entire lot's cleared out in time too. So really, by looking at the numbers, and discussing with staff and Patrick and Sandy, it's almost a no-brainer just to go to a full-time employee instead of paying out money that you don't see coming back. You're paying quite a substantial amount of money in services that you get a lot more labor hours with a full-time employee and staff. Not saying that person specific is going to be doing all the snow plowing and all the lawn mowing out at Fenway, but adding that position will be able to, will get done. So that was kind of the rationale on that whole process.
Was there a CIP? Is there a CIP impact to that decision, or is that staff able to do it with existing equipment?
The CIP impact would be the Groundmaster mower scheduled in 2021. Being the shortfall in 2021 and CIP numbers, Public Works took the plow truck that we had slated in 21 and moved that to 2025. So the trade-off was, we bring mowing back in house. We'd like to get that more, but then push out the plow truck 5 years.
And you're comfortable that leaves you okay from a plow truck perspective?
We're comfortable. We have another tandem truck coming this fall that was ordered in the spring. So we've got up to our oldest truck will now be a 2022. Okay. So even though our CIP plan is technically a 15-year replacement, the 2002 truck we have, I feel more than comfortable, moving that out a year. We just don't want to get to the point where we're in replacing 1990 trucks in 2020, but I think, give or take a year to stay somewhat close to the replacement schedule should be fine.
And overall, you said the position was about budget neutral.
Yep, I think with wages and benefits, depending on where that hire would come in, what grade and step, is a little under $90,000, and the two contracts are $90,000. So it would be, a wash, and depending if you didn't hire that person till March, April, a quarter of the season gone, you'd actually be 20,000 to the good, at least for 2021.
Thank you. That's incredibly helpful.
Yep.
Councilmember Byström.
Yeah, I just have one other question, just out of curiosity. As I look at this capital equipment fund and the purchases, it really starts to hit us hard in 2022 and then for sure 2023 and beyond. Is there any way to shift some of that back maybe and kind of balance it out? Is there a possibility to look at some additional purchases potentially in 2021? Maybe in 2022, I don't know if that's an option. I know that there's a kind of a window, a life, a life for these vehicles, but there are some smaller dollar amounts in there. And I'm just thinking, if we can try to balance that pain a little bit that's going to be hitting us in a couple of years. Just a thought, if there's an opportunity to add a little more now and have it not hit us quite as hard down the road.
Well, funny you should say that. One of the things we talked about just last week is, as you know, we have a fund balance policy of 50% in the general fund, and anything above that fund balance policy is available for reallocation or the council's discretion. We need to look at when we use that and use that wisely. Any use of fund balance should be used as a one-time revenue for a one-time expense, and capital equipment or capital improvement like the streets, that's where you should use it, because if you have a fund balance problem later on, you can cut out that expenditure and not hurt your operations. So we will be looking at that, whether it's this year or next year to use fund balance. Again, going back to the big issue with the capital equipment fund is the 2 fire trucks and the plow trucks. And so one of the questions we should be looking at, should we be spending $700,000 of fund balance, and I'm not saying we will, to purchase a fire truck and relieve that burden and try to smooth out this deficit curve? Or is there another way to do it? So we will look at that. I don't know how much we could push. Even if you push stuff forward to this year or to 2021, you're still affecting fund balance, and it's just going to make the other side worse. So you really have to identify new revenue or use of fund balance or some other method to finance those, like leasing. So that's the nice part about this budget right now, is we're balanced through the end of 2022. At least today we are. I can never comment on what happens during the year and what vehicle or piece of equipment may go south on us. So we have a couple of years to figure it out, but it's an issue we have to address, and we know it's out there. So we'll be looking at a solution, at least to balance this out through 2025 or longer.
Council, any questions this evening? Or asks of future presentation? I'm seeing heads shaking now. I would say digest the content over the next couple of days and get questions over to staff, Patrick and Sandy, so that they're able to prepare kind of specific responses, and we'll just do an open Q&A session for 1 hour starting at 6 o'clock on Monday, budget workshop, and prior to our regular council meeting. And then I think a goal for that would be to identify additional workshop topics for future meetings where we want to do additional Monday will be broad, and then we'll identify at the end of Monday where we want to do any additional focused discussion or exploration in a future meeting. All right.
Mute.
I don't have our agenda right in front of me, but I believe I've lost my agenda. I believe
We are on adjourn.
all right. Is there anything else is there anything else to come before us this evening? Any other questions? Not seeing any, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Councilmember Byström and Sam, did I see a second?
Yep.
And we've got a second from Sam. Karen, could we have a roll call for adjournment?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Thank you, everybody, for a great discussion. Thank you staff, for the budget presentation. I know a lot of work goes into this, and we look forward to future workshop sessions and moving the ball down the field. So much appreciated. We're adjourned. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.